And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man behind the tribunal, and the monthly adventures between him and myself, good brother Monarch.
Has there ever been a good explanation for the sheer volume of forced updates on PCs? Ever?
I would guess the race when it comes to security and that's as far as I'm willing to guess.
I hate them so much.
To that I say, take a number, sit your ass down.
Maybe if enough of us get angry, nothing will be done, but we can all feel better that we're angry together.
Yeah, what about those of us who are always angry?
Yeah, fair point. But yes, we're getting back into Megalos today.
Yep. So,
as some of you may remember, we split this one. Like each week, we're doing one of the classes because each class has its own kind of set of rules for how it works.
mm-hmm.
So it felt best to kind of separate each one into their own week.
Yeah.
This is going to be the second class with thrones.
So, for a bit of a refresher, last time around we tackled the Invokers, which I honestly feel like I realize that it's done alphabetically, but there's a part of me that wonders if maybe Thrones should have come before Invokers, given the concepts that it's going with. But each of them is fairly unique in how it handles things. I think we liked a good chunk of the Invoker concept, but we felt it was a little bit bottlenecked.
Yeah, the execution of it makes it feel very limiting. Once you pick your stance, I forget what they were called exactly
Mm-hmm.
off the top of my head, but
The Astral
once you
Number.
picked it, yeah, you were just there was so little you could do until you changed it.
That and
It did
at
not feel fun.
at the end of the day, it's still two abilities.
Yeah.
But
Two abilities you have depending on which stance you're currently in, but either way, it's just so it felt way too limiting to be that enjoyable.
yeah. But next we are going to be handling Thrones, which I'd say is the closest thing to the martial archetype that we're going to see in this so far. There was a bonus class and set of callings for Arcanist, but we're not covering that. But it's described as Thrones are warriors whose mastery over their own bodily essence is unmatched. They use their own life force, their biogenic aether, or core, as a weapon, shield, and tool. They are unrivaled martial masters. Some thrones belong to long traditions of martial artists with codified practices dating back centuries, while others are self-taught warriors. Core is defined as the aether of a creature's soul, cultivated and coaxed into a blazing, roaring aura, called their corona. Coronas are highly personal and individualized. A throne can't exactly choose what their corona will look like, but it is nevertheless an expression of their soul's truest form. Thrones start strong, but the longer a fight goes on, the less power they have to work with. It's in their best interest, therefore, to end fights quickly. And the three archetypes we have, or three callings, are going to be Arclights, who are described as warrior monks. Champions, who are described as Lords of the Blood Sands. And Shadowblades, who cultivate dark sides, manifestations of their id.
Now, for the rules of Thrones, Thrones have three main types of abilities: strikes, counters, and finishers. A Throne's power are separated into strikes and counters. Each Throne calling also has a unique finisher, which can only be used after injuring an enemy or damaging a foe that's already injured. Strikes come in two types: major action charge strikes and minor action combo strikes, while counters are always reactions. Combo strikes. Your combos are powers with two parts: a first strike and a second. You cannot normally choose to use the second strike. If you use the first strike action in a combo power, you become set up. If you are set up, either by yourself or an ally, when you use this power, you activate its second strike version instead. Whenever a second strike version of a power is used, setup is discharged regardless of any other rule that might normally prevent it from being lost. I'll say I do like the small inclusion of either by yourself or an ally. It kind of tells you can set other people up for these combo strikes rather than just yourself. And then we get charge strikes. When you choose to take a slow turn, and only then, acting after your enemies instead of before them, you can take a special minor action called charging. If you do, you may use the charged version of a major action strike instead of its normal version. Using the charged version of a power gives it the cooldown tag. I kind of like this idea of using the different turns for charged attacks like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And then we have their oh, go on.
I could see it. We're kind of seeing the early forms of the combo-ist approach that this is going for.
Yeah.
But continue on.
Then we get their ether current, the corona. That can't be how this is intended to be pronounced. But that's the only way I can see to pronounce this.
Well, if anyone gets mad at us, all I'll say is Put in the pronunciation guide. Otherwise, you get what you pay for.
Yes. Your body and soul are composed of corporeal and incorporeal aether, respectively. They're made up of very different types of aether and operate under fairly different physical laws, normally. By means of ancient arts of meditation and etheric cultivation, one can transform incorporeal aether into corporeal and vice versa. Corporeal aether is far denser than incorporeal, so transforming the elements of your mortal body into soul energy creates a massive flare of power as the aether is decompressed. This creates the phenomenon known as corona, a surging etheric aura used by thrones to perform incredible feats of martial skill and destructive power.
For all intents and purposes, Corona is key.
Yeah.
Then we have
I don't know why they didn't just call it key in this case then.
I have a feeling I know why, and I have a feeling the reason why is one that I would vehemently disagree with.
Yeah.
But I will get into that later. But then we have the Aether Current dice. When a combat encounter begins, place all 4 of your Aether Current dice on your sheet or somewhere else convenient. You don't need to roll them yet. You receive a +1 bonus to your CD for each unspent AC die. So to start off each combat encounter, you'll have +4 CD. Whenever an attack or damaging action you perform induces the target to the injured state, or so 50% or lower HP, or damages them while they're in the injured state, you can burn one of your AC dice to perform your calling's unique finisher ability as a free action. Finishers may only be used once per target per combat encounter. Only the main triggering enemy is considered the target for purposes of this limitation. When you choose to use a finisher, you'll roll the AC die you burned and follow the rules for resolving your calling's finisher. By default, you inflict a number of points of piercing damage equal to the number rolled on the die, but each finisher has its additional effects other than just this damage. The bonus to your CD from having unburned AC dice is reduced by -1 when you use a finisher, as your AC dice are depleted, but this reduction only happens after the finisher is fully resolved. Burned AC dice are normally lost until the end of the combat encounter. The easiest way to get these dice back is by drinking an Aether Potion or using the Power Up major action. I see what the attempt is here. Give yourself a passive bonus that you're burning to do these powerful finishers. If those finishers aren't sufficiently a step up from your normal attacks, it's gonna seem like it's not worth it enough.
Yeah, this is gonna come down to how fun and interesting these finishers actually are.
Mm-hmm. And I do think we should give a refresher on CD. So give me a moment. Oh yeah, that's going to be in character creation. This is where, again, it would be really, really nice if we had bookmarks. So let's see. So CD is core damage, so the base damage of your weapon. So a plus 4 right out the gate. Certainly going to have an effect. But my big concern is whether or not it's going to end up over rewarding a more defensive or turtling approach, which I don't think this is a game that really wants to do that. which is why it's going to be important to look at the actual finishers. I liken this to how in some games there'll be a certain effect that is only good for once per scene or once per encounter, and the effect is just numbers go up. That's not sufficient to justify such a limiting cost. Like if it's something that you need to do a 8-hour rest or something, it should be a pretty beefy thing you're getting for that kind of cost. You get what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Looks like I got something in my eye. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, we do after this have a nice little page of some of the throne relevant rules.
Mm-hmm. Some of these we saw last time we covered Invoker, like AoE. But it's nice to have it again here.
Yes.
We have auto hit, charged, which we already talked about charging, as well as combos. We have Demon's Bargain. Some powers offer you a chance to do more than they normally do. More damage, more status effects, more whatever. In exchange for this bonus, however, you suffer some ill fate. Most commonly, you become exposed, overextending yourself by pushing your advantage a little too far. Interesting.
I always like abilities and functions like that when done well.
Yep. Forfend, which I guess is a kind of delayed damage. Interesting. Then we have the advancement table. So you're learning new strikes at levels 2, 4, 6, and 8. And these can either be charged attacks or combo attacks. New counters are learned at levels 1, 4, 7, and 10. New talents every other level. New artifact slots at 2, 5, 8, and 10. But the fact that you do have a bigger variety of abilities is already a step up compared to Invoker. Then we have the Throne Talents. Actually, I'm going to zoom this out a bit and go with 2-page. 3 of them are for any throne, 1 of them is only for Shadow Blades, which turns them into a tank. And Darkest Night also gains the Gathering Shadows bonus power. We'll come back to this when we cover Shadow Blades in this. I don't think we have full context just yet.
Yeah.
Let's see, Venom Blades is also Shadow Blade.
You kind of think they would have waited until the Shadow Blade calling to put that in, though. It seems weird to put it earlier.
It's because that talent changes the calling's bonus ability.
Yeah.
And we have a few of the others. And the vibe I keep getting when it comes to Throne is like this hybrid of elements between Fighter and Monk.
Yeah.
Or at least what Monk is intended to be, not what it actually ends up being. The first calling we have is the Arclight. Arclights are devoted to a rigid path of personal fulfillment through moral cultivation. They are warrior monks who see their purpose in the world as the vanquishing or redemption of evil and the protection and cultivation of good. So, paladins. They are basically paladins. Let's see. Tank roles. Base HP of 32, defenses 10 dodge and 10 ward, plus your defenses. Base damage of 4, recovery of 4, 4 recovery, and a recovery base of quarter your max HP. And their bonus power is Aegis of Light. It's a reaction with Forfend. You trigger it by suffering damage the first time in an encounter. You gain Forfend 6, and can apply it to 6 of the damage suffered to your Forfend pool. You can advance it to either increase the Forfend to 12, or gain +1 on soak while you have damage in that Forfend pool. And remember, the idea with Forfend is you offload damage onto that pool, and once it reaches its cap, then you take that damage.
And now we'll get to the finisher so we can actually see what these are all about. So, for the Arclight finisher, Warrior of Light. All thrones have special abilities unique to their callings called finishers. The Arclight finisher is called Warrior of Light. When you injure a foe or damage an injured foe, you can choose to spend AC dice as a free action to activate your calling's finisher. Finishers may only be used once per round. All finishers have a range of 0. At level 3, you gain a +1 bonus on the number rolled on your AC die when using your finisher. At level 9, this increases to +2. And for the actual finisher, your resolve strengthens and a pure etheric light coalesces into a weapon in your hand. With this blade of light, will you smite your foes and bring succor to the wounded. Done as a free action, finisher, auto hit, healing, and target.
You skipped the name of the finisher.
Oh, I thought I said Warrior of Light already.
No, you didn't. But anyway.
But yeah, costs 1 Aether die on a hit. Roll the AC dice spent to activate this power and inflict piercing damage on the triggering target equal to roll, then choose 1. Up to 3 allies in range 1, targets heal for the amount rolled. Up to 3 foes in range 1, targets suffer piercing damage equal to the amount rolled, or up to 4 creatures in range 0. Allies heal for half the amount, foes suffer half the amount as piercing damage. Okay, so I am kind of happy to at least see that the finisher roll, it's not just going to be the same every time. You have some things to choose between.
That said, the Aether Current die are D6s. Like, as a general rule, we covered this. Regardless of how it's used, the Aether Current die is a D6. Now, I could be. Is it possible that I could be wrong on that? Yes, but and to make sure that I'm not, let me double check. But I distinctly recall that they are D6s by default.
Yeah. That sounds accurate.
Which, if that is the case, then I might have some questions. Let me. Yep. Let's see. Well, at least for Invoker, they were D6s. For Throne... Actually, no, never mind. It said on page 48, they're D6s. Which, because of that, it does mean that the effectiveness of finisher is going to have a range of 1 to 6. And even with
it gets the bonuses, but they're pretty small.
Yeah. So I'm still not 100% sold on whether or not the giving up the damage bonus is enough.
Well, let's see, because you still got that +4 bonus just by the default, not specific.
You start with it, but whenever you use one of your finishers, you're burning 1 point out of that 4-point bonus.
And you only get this once per enemy.
Mm-hmm. Like, considering all the restrictions on finishers, if Warrior or Light is any indication, I'm not entirely sure it's powerful enough.
Especially with the idea, because it even said, like, the idea here is end the fight quick. Is this ending it that much quicker? I'm thinking maybe like a 1-turn swing for when the fight will end.
Now, piercing damage means it's going straight through armor. That's nice and all, but it's still a range of 1 through 6. It's still a healing amount of 1 through 6 if you're taking that approach, or 1 through 6 damage to up to 3 foes in range 1, or up to half, or do a half and half if in range 0. Where am I? And I know that there's the insistence on having Aether current dice be D6s. If I'm being honest, I think that might not have been the best move with how the throne is set up here.
This is one of those things that's going to come down to enemies. Like, I've scrolled down a bit, so it'll be a second to get back to the place I was. Wraith. 60 hit points. Okay, let's look at another one. There's a bunch of 1-hit point enemies, so the finisher is entirely meaningless on some of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm kind of seeing most enemies are popping in at 60 or 1 hit points that are just randomly listed. Or 65. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these numbers, I'm not liking how they're looking.
Which, if that's the case, then the finisher is not strong enough. At least if D6 is going to be the die used. Now I know the argument could be made that say the arc light is meant to be a tank, not a striker. But even tanks can hit hard. Now we've seen that already.
I mean, to a degree, you kind of need a tank to do one of two things: be threatening enough that they have to answer you, or you have abilities that force your opponent to have to focus on you as opposed to somebody else. Mm-hmm. I have seen neither of these so far from the Arc Knight.
Yeah. But then we have the counters. When making a new Arc Knight, you pick a counter from the following list. These are abilities that are triggered by other events. It can be used even when it's not currently your turn, as long as the trigger condition has been met. And when it comes to a lot of them, most of them are essentially procs. Wings of Wrath is an interesting one. It's a reaction when you use your finisher. Up to 3 foes within range 1 not damaged by your finisher suffer 2 piercing damage, but you can advance it to increase the range to 3 or increase the max number of targets to 5. Or Wings of Divinity. All allies healed by your finisher gain a regen for 1 round. So I will admit I like the whole counter setup. But moving on, we have strikes. And the combo strikes we already covered. About how you have the first strike effect, and then that can be the setup for the second strike effect.
Okay, we do have abilities here that actually taunt bows.
Mm-hmm.
Alright. That is good to see.
Yeah. There's Endless Waltz taunts, Battlebrand taunts. Actually, let's see, Royal Arms does not, but it does pull. And Thunder God Steel does not. But its second one inflicts disadvantage on the target's next attack roll. But then we have Charge Strikes. These are the ones that are major action effects. And
so it seems the overall game plan here is inflict taunts, then inflict taunted enemies with some kind of a debuff.
Mm-hmm. Which I can certainly get that.
I like the idea.
And taking that into account, I know it would be tempting to say that because of that, the design of the finisher makes sense, but the problem is it's still at the mercy of a 1 to 6 range, and for something that you're only going to be using 4 times and reducing your damage, your core damage every time you do it, I don't think it's strong enough.
And remember, up to 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
You still can't hit the same guy with a finisher more than once. So it has to be different targets, unless I'm reading that wrong, but I believe that's the case.
Yeah, even with that,
yeah, that kind of makes it more limiting as a thing. I don't think it needs to be that limiting.
A big part of my design philosophy is when you have something that is limited in terms of its effects, you need to justify that limitation.
Now, there is something I'm going to note because we didn't really look too much at the talents. There are talents that interact specifically with a finisher, and I think that actually makes it a bit more interesting than just what the finisher itself reads as. So I'll give it a little more credit than the initial read of the finisher. But I still don't see the need to penalize the damage when you're already limiting it to once per target.
And
I think if you drop that penalty, I think it's fine.
I think that though relying on those kind of talents creates the false choice problem that I know in my own work I tried very, very hard to avoid. Of those features or whatnot, those picks that are too useful to not take.
I'm glancing at some of them now, specifically some of the Arclight only ones. I don't think that's an issue here. Because, yeah, you can make that more useful, but I don't think that's really what the problem with the finishers are. It's the fact you're incurring that penalty on top of limiting it to 1 per opponent. I think if you just leave it as limiting it to once, or targeting it to 1 opponent at a time, without knocking down that damage penalty or damage bonus, I think you're gonna be. I think I'd be fine with it if you just kind of implemented that house rule, because you're not punishing yourself by using a finisher that isn't really finishing the fight anymore.
Not to mention, because I think overall the problem we have with finishers is there are far too many restrictions and not enough of a justification for those restrictions.
I think I'm seeing a similar kind of core design problem as we saw with the previous one. What was the last class called?
Invoker.
Yeah. I think they're seeing like certain abilities and they're trying to handicap or restrict you too much. I understand wanting to restrict really powerful to kind of keep a semblance of some kind of balance or sanity, but I think in the case of both of these classes, they went a little too far.
I could see that. But then we have the champion, which is described as a throne that's all about adventure, excitement, and perfecting martial technique. So their role is striker. Which does have the usual setup for strikers, I will note. Their base HP is 24, base defenses are 9 dodge and 7 ward, base damage is 6, recovery is 4, recovery base is 1/4 max. Their bonus power is Wild Charge, which is a minor action with attack, Demon's Bargain, and movement. Targets one foe in ranged 1. Test is weapon dice versus dodge. Hit does core damage, physical damage. But you cannot use this power while engaged with the target. You have to move adjacent to the target before resolving the attack. If you take Demon's Bargain, the damage becomes piercing, but you suffer exposed, and the power gains the cooldown tag. And the two advances are you can increase the range to 3, or Demon's Bargain effect also increases the damage by +2. So, we see in here an early incarnation of Demon's Bargain, and it kind of puts in a risk-reward setup.
Then we get the champion finisher, Aether Drive Breaker. See, this first little bit's just the same as it was on the other. So for the actual finisher for Aether Drive Breaker, your Corona flares like a blazing bonfire as you lash out with a flurry of Wild Strike. Free action, auto hit, Damon's Bargain. Injure a foe or damage an injured foe for the trigger. Limit 1 per round. Cost 1 Aether die. So hit roll the AC die spent to activate this power and inflict piercing damage on the target or on the triggering target equal to the roll. If I rolled an odd number, the target also suffers exposed. If you roll an even number, roll the die again and inflict that much additional damage. Right? And for the special, if the trigger target is defeated by the damage of this finisher, becomes set up. For the Damon's Bargain, spend and roll a second AC die on this finisher, suffer exposed. See, now we're kind of getting to that same thing with, is that D6 really worth suffering exposed?
Especially since this is a striker, which means if they're exposed, they're going to take +4 damage instead of +3.
I'm really not liking the dice only being D6 here. There needs to be a rework of the number applied from the AC die. But yeah, then we get into their counters. So when making a new champion, pick counters. That's going to be the same as any of the others. So just pick a couple random ones. Devil Deflection. It's a reaction, trigger, a foe damages you. Effect.
Mm-hmm.
You suffer -2 damage from the triggering attack, and another foe in range 0 suffers 2 piercing damage. Alright. So take a little less damage, hurt them for hitting you. Advance, increase the damage to the secondary foe to 4, or inflict 2 piercing damage on the triggering foe. Hold on. My brain's weird with this math right now. Inflict 2 piercing damage on the triggering foe. You're already inflicting 2 piercing damage, so that goes to 4. The other advance, increase damage to the secondary foe to 4. My brain's saying both of these advances end up the same amount of damage.
The latter is just inflicting 2 damage on whoever's hitting you that's triggering Devil Deflection.
Instead of increasing the damage it's already doing? Oh, it's which of the foes it's dealing it to, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alright. Yeah, that was just my brain suffering for a second there. We're good. But yeah, then another random one. Takedown, trigger, a foe enters my zone. Triggering foe suffers 2 piercing damage and stunned. Advanced, increase damage to 4, or after stunned wears off, the target is... I do think we got a pretty decent variety of effects here, and advances it'll do different things.
Yeah. But then
I think overall, like, I don't like the finisher setup because the Aether dies, but I'm liking how the counters are working.
Yeah. Counters, the setup with strikes is certainly nice. And because of the way setup works, and there are certain actions that can put you in setup that don't require to use the first strike, that is a nice setup. Yes, I realize I used the same term twice, sue me. But when it comes to the different strikes, I know one might say, shouldn't we have a problem with the fact that there's only 4 per calling? I don't have as much of a problem with that because you essentially have 8 potential actions total.
Yeah. And you're not arbitrarily limiting yourself at a certain turn like you were with the invokers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really have an issue at all with the counters and strikes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure if we looked at each one individually, they might be weird. We have come across some random stuff here that seems a little oddly worded.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very least, the idea in this one is sound.
Yeah. And when it comes to the charged effect on the major actions, which are the charged attacks. Let me... All that is just follow through by using the charging minor actions. So it's very clear that the throne is meant to be very fighting game in terms of how it's designed. which I'm perfectly fine with, but it does make the finishers that much more confusing. Not in effect, but in degree of effect, essentially. But the third calling is the Shadow Blade, or avenging angels, dark knights, and shadowy assassins who bring justice to those who believe themselves untouchable. So, yeah. For those who want to do Cecil circa the first fourth of Final Fantasy IV, here you go. And we already mentioned the whole dark side thing. So if you want to be a stand user but don't want to be an invoker, Shadowblade should be under consideration. Shadowblades are also strikers, and have similar stats to the champion. Their minor power is Soul Eater. Oh, really? We are even more on the nose. So this is a minor action attack. Targets one foe in weapon range. Test is weapon dice versus dodge. Deals core damage physical if hit. And if the target is injured or becomes injured by this attack, you gain regen. Its advances are either target either dodge or ward, whichever is lower, or gain advantage with this attack against injured foes. Okay, this I like. It's a very nice bully kind of setup. And their finisher is Dark Side Release. Which you roll the AC die spent to activate its power twice and inflict piercing damage on the triggering target equal to the higher of the two rolls. Divide the result by 2 and inflict that much piercing damage on a second target within range 1 of the triggering target. Then divide the damage dealt to the second target by 2, rounded up, and inflict that much piercing damage to a third target within range 1 of the second target. And you heal 2 for each target damaged. I'm glad.
Do you know how much fun you could have with this if you didn't have a D6 for your die?
Yes.
It's like there's a common theme here. These finishers were handicapped by the fact that the Aether Current die is set up.
Yeah, I can see now for Invoker the die size doesn't matter as much because it's just a game of odds and evens. So you got a 50-50 shot either way. With Throne, I am on the fence between whether or not the Aether Current die should have been a D8 or a D10. Like I'm not sure if D10 might be too much. D12 or full on D20 would definitely be too much.
And way too. I don't know. Maybe just what is it? Because you get the +1 at level 3 and 2 at 9.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just add your level. It scales up with you. I think you start getting some numbers that'll actually be worthwhile to have. I don't know for sure if that's how I'd want to do that, but yeah, maybe just add your level. And I think the finisher would be much nicer to have on hand.
Yeah, if it has to be the idea of an Aether Current die, then I think D8 is a decent enough middle ground.
I'd only say with that, like, if you're just defaulting to D8 each time, it's not really getting that much stronger with you as you level up. That +1 and +2 from the levels 3 and 9 just don't feel like enough to even warrant including them.
Especially when you cap at 10. I could see that.
Yeah. So I almost think if you're gonna keep it at the D6 but add level, I think would work out. It's something I'd want to like experiment with on the math first, say definitively. But
Instead of
I
adding,
think we can
instead of
say
adding
it's not D6.
I think instead of adding, it should be a reroll. Like if you roll your level or less, then reroll it.
That could work too.
Yeah. But let's see. Then
Either way, we just agree the D6 is not good enough.
But then we have the counters, which are going to work similar to other counters, but there does seem to be an emphasis on debuffing with them, or essentially draining kind of effects, even if they're not called that. But then we have strikes. Which are going to work in a similar way, though. Each of them seems to have their own particular debuffs that they're themed around.
A lot of these strikes seem to be either debuff opponent or some stuff to kind of buff yourself. Like Cloak and Dagger, you give yourself cloaked.
Mm-hmm.
Or shielded from Chaos Swarm. So they have a couple abilities to give themselves some kind of inbuilt protection.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the charge strikes, I think one of the main themes is that they are meant to focus more on doing indirect damage and setup rather than doing raw damage, because a lot of there's a few exceptions here, but a good amount of their strikes only do half your core damage instead of all of it.
But you're getting all kinds of different stuff in addition to that to make up for it. And they actually seem like they'd be pretty fun.
Yeah.
In this system.
Like if you want raw damage, it's clear that you should pick Champion instead of Shadowblade. But since we are bringing up Shadowblade, I want to scroll back a bit and look at that alternate starting power you could get for Shadowblade. So let me go back to there. We saw that all the way back in Talents. Now, Gathering Shadows. Your dark side pulls in a writhing mass of shadows which lash out like barbed ebon chains, inky fetters, or tearing claws to pull your foes into range. Minor action, attack, AoE, auto hit. It's AoE 3 foes in range 1. Deal 3 piercing damage, targets are pulled 1 and taunted. You can advance it to either increase the damage by +1 or increase the range to 2. And if you choose that talent, your roll goes from Striker to Tank. As well as the fact that whenever you inflict Afraid, you can inflict Taunted instead. So essentially, Dark Knight can either be Striker or Tank.
Considering some of those abilities to give yourself the cloak and shield buffs, that makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah. So, how do we feel about the throne compared to what we saw out of Invoker?
Now, I think we're going to agree, like, the finishers feel needlessly hampered. But I think you could have a lot more fun with this kind of varied pool of abilities. You're not limiting yourself. You have options following up with your combos and all that. I think this would be a lot funner to play than the Invoker.
I could see it. When it comes to it, it definitely has a better action economy through both the minor actions with the strikes and the major actions with charged, and the fact that each charge attack has a souped-up variant if you do the charge minor action. So there's a big emphasis on setting up and follow through, and as I mentioned, a very fighting game like design. The elephant in the room. So far it's been 2 that we've had a major issue with is the whole Aether Current die system. Last time the issue that we had was it was bottlenecking your action economy. This time around it's the fact that for what you get out of it, I'm not sure it's quite enough.
Here's the thing, like, in my head, I'm thinking of different things I could be doing with these thrown characters. Not one of these ideas I'm thinking of has anything at all to do with their finish. Because I'm like, it almost doesn't matter for how I'd run the character. It's just a thing I might occasionally do.
Which I really feel like finishers should be a more integral part of the loop.
Or, maybe it should finish something.
Oh.
Like, we saw... I ran through some of those, like, bigger enemy HP numbers. If you are lucky, your finisher is going to take care of, 10%? And you only get to smack them with it once. And then you're kind of gimped for the rest of the fight because you've knocked your damage down. Yeah, I don't like it. I feel like they're trying to limit their stronger abilities in this game needlessly. I'm not saying no kind of limit, but they pushed it a little far.
Yeah.
To just kind of make it not fun.
I understand the whole notion of wanting to keep things balanced. I get that. But that pendulum can swing both ways. Especially since, at the end of the day, with everything that we've seen, with the kind of setting that this is, Megalos is very much a power fantasy kind of game. At least that's what it is trying to be.
Yeah, hold on a second. Didn't it say these classes want to end the fight quick, and that's why they have the finisher?
I feel like
Their
that's a
finishers aren't
contradiction.
accomplishing what they stated it to do. Especially when you have one of the first finisher we saw involved healing your allies, which, don't get me wrong, I'm entirely okay with that. It's like, we want to end the fight quick, that's why we have a finisher. What does your finisher do? Lets us tank up and turtle up. It's like, what? How did we get from A to B so quickly?
Yeah, I think that whole finish the fight quickly should have been dropped. That's something that can only really work with strikers or glass cannon kind of archetypes. You can't really do that when you're a tank, because because doing that kind of heavy damage is counter to being a tank in this game.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I actually do like having good options in RPGs for just, like, being able to have those options to turtle up. I like having a good variety in the game like that. I just think their messaging's a little off here.
Yeah. But we once again have this pattern of there's some decent ideas, but there's one or two things that are really hampering things.
I'll say I think in this case, like, it's an easy enough fix compared to the Invoker. You just need to do something about how the Aether Current die interacts with your finisher.
Yeah. So, the next time that we tackle Megalos, we will be going into the Witch class and its particular callings. And that should be an interesting time when we get to it. Let's see if we've had the anomaly, the coincidence. Let's see if we have the pattern next week.
I think we're hitting the pattern, because I think it comes down to a design philosophy in this game we disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
What that philosophy actually is, who knows? We don't have them there to explain it. I think there's something core in this game's philosophy that isn't clicking with us.
Yeah. And we will see how things play out. I'm not praying and hoping that we end up being proven right on that front, but if it happens, it happens. But with that said, as always, a sincere thanks to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come all the way to the monastery. We will be back here next week with more of the Valley. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.